Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Szymon. I work as a Sitecore developer at Untitled, and currently I'm delegated to one of the large biotech companies to help them with their Sitecore implementations. And I would like to tell you about one of them, a microsites, corporate microsites and microsites platform, which is probably too sensitive, where we use Sitecore Experience Accelerator. So I won't be talking about Sitecore SXI itself, but I'd like to focus on why we chose this tool, what was the problems, and what were the benefits from using this tool. For those of you who doesn't know what Sitecore Experience Accelerator is, this is a plugin from Sitecore which provides a library of components that can be used to quickly set up a majority of the common website and extend it with custom functionalities. So the whole story begins in late December 2016 when I met with the business to talk about their expectations and their goals. At the time of the meeting, their current situation, they have one large website which was targeted at everyone. At their customers, they use it to sell their products, but also at the investors, people looking for job, at press. They published documents they were legally obliged to, and also had lots of auxiliary applications, so some kind of custom product configurator, product finder, the whole profile management used in the shop, to name a few, and there were more. So this was, let's not be afraid to say, a large old website. It started as a Sitecore 6 point something, then it was migrated to 7.5 and stuck there. I've seen commits dated 2011, so pretty old. However, it generated a good part of revenue for them, so nobody wanted to take a risk to rewriting it at once. And the business decided, the company owners decided to start small and extract the most content-oriented part, the safe one that don't generate any revenue, leave the entire ecosystem of applications untouched, and create a content-based corporate portal, which was goal of the project. So apart from upgrading Sitecore to newer version, of course the business wanted to upgrade the visual side of the visual part of the site, because again in 2011 mobile support was just abstraction. Nobody browsed websites from mobile, or hardly anybody, so the page is not mobile friendly. But from our perspective, it's less important. The more important is how the web page looked like. You can see it consists of pretty simple and standard components. We have a carousel, we have a couple of boxes, or even more boxes. So this is a page that has lots of links to different smaller pages, no custom logic. Here we see example of pure content page, lots of text with combination of images and text. So this is very content-oriented site, and that's important from our decision-making process. Don't touch this. Thank you. The business has also more requirements, less functional. They wanted to improve outer experience of their application. Again, old, large website, myriad of templates and fields added by various teams who extended this website. They wanted to get rid of that and start fresh. Also, the old website didn't support Experience Editor, so authors have to go to Content Editor, find fields, which were a lot of them, and change them. By the way, they wanted to make the site modular, so they don't have to stick with strict layouts. They wanted to adapt the layout, change the layout, so they don't have to pay for refreshing the page anymore. They just can replace a couple of modules and have quite new look of the site. Also, as with every project, they wanted it to be reliable, bug-free, and so on. And as a side effect, they wanted to have strong fundamentals to build a platform for other microsites. So they should have consistent look, they should use existing modules and allow to quickly create smaller sites for campaigns or events, whatever. This prompted me to suggest SXA to be used as a tool. And let me, for a small digression, I started working with Sitecore at Kuźniak, which developed Zen Garden platform, which is a conceptual ancestor for the SXA. So apart from hearing about it, I've seen how lots of ideas used in the SXA developed. I've seen its capabilities. So that was one of the reasons I suggested it. Also, since we were using out-of-the-box software, we could make benefit of other companies using and testing it, so we can assume it will be more reliable than custom solution that we produce. So that's basically answer for the question why the SXA was suggested. But to make an informed decision, we also run estimations. How long would it take to develop the site with SXA and without? And well, it went that with SXA, we will be able to deliver the website within 2.5 months with 2 people, and without, it will take 3.5 months with 3 people. And the project started 2nd of January, and the site went live at the end of June. But whether it was SXA fault or not, we'll get into that. So up the hill, we started the project and ran into first issues. I will be using how it works without SXA, and then what problems we have with SXA. So we have comparison of different approaches. So as far as I remember, the CMS standard workflow starts with the designer who creates pictures of how the page should look like. They get approved by the business, and they are passed to the front-end team who produces HTML and CSS and JavaScript. Then we run into issues as David described, so we have to integrate HTML into our project, fill in it with data from the CMS, and we have working solution. Somewhere here comes authors who start adding their content, and the site goes live. Now, in reality, the front-end work often got delayed because we have lots of browsers, we have lots of devices to support, and well, in past projects, we never started project with full HTML provided by the front-end team. So everything got delayed. Backend is highly dependent on frontend because they don't have the HTML, so they can fill it with content. Authors get their site even later, so everything gets delayed. I'm not saying that frontend is to be blamed for everything, but this is one of the cases. Now with SXA, we get rid of the need to create the HTML part because we are using ready-to-use components. So the HTML is defined and it's created or set up by the backend team. So we switch the dependency, and by having the standard HTML, we can allow frontend to work slightly later, but in fact in parallel. So we start creating components, export them, pass to the frontend. They can play with CSS. They can't change the HTML, so they don't block backend work. Also, we can pass the ugly version of the website to the authors, so they can start entering content. Everything goes in parallel. Well, That's in theory, because in reality, in our project at least, we quickly ran into a problem that people who were responsible for styling the HTML didn't have influence on how the HTML looks like. So they just got something that the backend developer thought would be feasible for them, but they couldn't do much with it or without nasty hacks. So they keep coming back and saying, okay, can you please adjust this piece of HTML? Can you please add this class? Can you please do something? SXA has some tools that support it. The tool is called Creative Exchange. It allows to add classes for them, but again, the version we used has some bugs that prevented us from using it, so we couldn't use it. And as the front-end part got delayed and there were more and more front-end developers to support it, this blocked the back-end work because they were constantly coming to do the adjustments in the HTML that was produced by the SXA. Now, we considered a couple of approaches to this problem. For example, giving them a separate Sitecore instance where they can configure the components and don't bother us to do this for them. But we ran into problem how we can get back the work that they did in Sitecore into our repository. Because we are using TDS, so we need to synchronize the items from Sitecore to disk to the repository. Besides, when they heard that they have to install Visual Studio and then learn how to use Sitecore, the problem dropped. I mean, the solution turned out not to be a good one. So right now, my idea is to, since the components are configured according to some rules, which are predictable and known, to teach them how the rules work so they can adjust the HTML locally on the fly and just create a Jira ticket for us to update the HTML in the repository. However, we haven't tested it yet. On top of that, when they first heard that they won't have any influence on the HTML and they are forced to work with some strict restrictions of the SXA, it was almost visible to see the joy of joining new project dying in their eyes. I mean, you know, those 5 steps of dealing with serious problems like denial, anger, bargaining, depression and acceptance, it was almost in every one of them. So they weren't very happy that they will get some predefined HTML and they can't use whatever they want in this project. However, when we finally get them to work, we faced another problem. You see, in normal workflow, they will work locally on less, then on the build server will translate the less into CSS, and the CSS gets included into the website and it's served from the website and the problem's over. The work's done. Now in SXA, it doesn't work that simple because SXA uses concept of themes. Theme is a set of CSS and JavaScript files which is included on the page. And the theme is held in Sitecore in form of media items. So it can be easily switched on the site, but it has the consequence of including the theme into the Sitecore. So once we get to translating less to CSS, we're not done yet because we need the CSS and the JavaScript files to be transferred to Sitecore somehow so they can be used as a theme. So again, there's a creative exchange, but since we cannot use it, we have a PowerShell script that uploads the files one by one into the Sitecore instance, which is happening on the developers, on the integration environment. So automatically it's not synchronized into the Git. So we have a separate repository that we build and upload to every single environment we have. So this makes the entire deployment process even longer, because we use TDS to create update package, but we can't pack everything into this update package since we don't have the theme in the repository. Actually, SXA uses content a lot. In a standard Sitecore implementation, you will have a bunch of Sitecore items that you get when you install Sitecore, so you don't usually want to touch them. Then there's pack of developers items, so the content, the templates, the rendering, some settings maybe, and the outer items. The proportions are totally made up. It's just for showing that the developers items is really small piece of this whole set. Now, since SXA is configurable mostly within Sitecore, then this proportion is different, and the border here is very fuzzy. So we don't have clear distinction of the developers items and versus authors items. So the difference is that the developer items should be versioned in our Git repository and uploaded to Sitecore once we do the release. And the author items is basically content, so it's pages and stuff authors add during while they work with the site. And this leads to the problem, what actually should we version? It also depends on the structure of the team. So in our case, we have authors and developers, so we own part of the content, part of the site that is stored in the content tree, that shows that controls how the page looks like. However, we can easily think of setup where developers are responsible for mostly coding, and there are some power authors, let's call them designers, who can set up page layouts and can control how the page looks like. And we don't want to version this part of content because they will work with it. Now, what's the problem with SXA? That it makes this editing sometimes too easy. Now, how can something be too easy? If we version items responsible for the page layout, we want to have strict process of updating them. So we want to do this on developer machine, then put it on integration for testing, then from integration to QA, and with the release to production. But since this is content, it's very easy to change and adapt. So if there's such need from the business or from the owner to update something on production, it's quite easy to do, and if you forget to synchronize it, you end up with content being overridden during next update. So we have a couple situations where we lost changes that were made on production on items that we versioned because we forgot to synchronize them. So for example, we were adding, let's say, a style that authors can assign to a rendering, and it wasn't synchronized into the Git. So with next update, since we wipe out all the styles and replace them with ours, it just got rid and we lost it. Now, another problem of SXA is that it's terribly heavy, and it's general problem of applications that are meant to satisfy as many people as possible. So you get a lot of features from which you will use only a small fraction of them that are that you need. SXA, if I recall correctly, contains about 100-something components, whereas we, for example, are using about 20, maybe even less. There are lots of items created, and this creates some chaos for authors. They see lots of components that they will never use, and it requires some work to get rid of them and select only those that are needed for them and should be used by them. Also, we get lots of classes that technically should be implemented for the theme to be compliant, so we can switch themes. But for example, we didn't implement it since they were they didn't fit the content of our website. Thankfully, this intersection here was pretty large with SXA, so it wasn't all that bad. Yeah. So now, what actually went well, and why using SXA might be beneficial for you? It's extremely flexible, and once we get live and the authors started working on the site, I often got questions whether we can use I know this kind of rendering here, even though it wasn't included in the design. And in most cases, the answer is yes, because SXA forces modularity, so something that was a requirement, it's given almost for free. Also, another story, I was asked to create a different type of page that will have simpler header for just informative content. So I said, okay, file a ticket, we'll create a design, we'll do this in the next sprint. And then the guy said, okay, we have tomorrow meeting with CFO who wants this page, so can you do this, like, I don't know, within today? So it took me about 20 minutes to click another design and another 20 to synchronize it back to the repository. So it's extremely flexible. It really allows to almost dynamically create website once we have a set of styles. So using the puzzles, we can build the entire website. Also, author experience comes for free, and because the entire SXA, one of the core concepts is support for good author experience, support for authors. We get experience editor support, so almost everything can be done from the experience editor. There's no need to go into content editor. Plus, in smaller projects, there's often no time to polish the solution in terms of authors. So once everyone starts creating new fields, new components, the authors are often forgotten. So there's no support from experience editor. There's no frames for the components, and SXA gives for all of their components lots of author goodies. Also, there's the developers who use SXA were not forgotten, so they extended some parts of the content editor as well. So it's easier to publish, it's easier to navigate between the page. And since they are using PowerShell, there's also lots of scripts that simplify things that could technically take some time longer. Again, since we use boxed software, we can, and well, I know this because I've seen it from the inside, the ideas that are there, the final version is just a result of trial and error approach. So something that is now that now can be used easily went a long way to be built. For example, component variants that allows dynamically fill in components with different fields. Started as a single field that required typing in field names to configure, into a complex mechanism when you can dynamically build the HTML that is rendered by the rendering. And this also touches search and other areas of the SXA. Now, what is more important, SXA puts a lot of effort to be a friend rather than something that prevents you from doing stuff. So everything can be extended, everything is well separated, so you can align with the way of how SXA creates components. So it's hard to distinguish which components are custom, which are SXA. Everything aligns together and builds a coherent website. It basically lies on top of Sitecore and allows you to build your custom code either on top of SXA or on the side, so you don't have you don't lose any Sitecore capabilities. SXA uses Helix, so it's well separated, well designed, and it's easily extendable. And as I said, it facilitates modularity. So this piece here is a design of what we get from the designer, and all those images are various uses of components which are used here, or even components that the designer didn't think of. Didn't think of. So the video or text here, some buttons. So once authors got the final product, they were able to use the components in various different combinations. So that was one of their expectations. And this also mostly comes for free if you use SXA. And on top of that, the microsites platform. So we have boxes, and with small amount of work, mostly around copying stuff, we were able to create a platform which now can be used to create microsites, and one of them is already live. So without any front-end work, with small back-end work related to setting everything up, mostly around training and content entry, it took, I think, a couple of days to set up new page. And the authors are still working on it, adding more content. So now the question, was it worth it to use SXA? The answer, in my opinion, is yes, and I would definitely recommend it again. Mostly because the benefits that we had overcomes the problems, and the problems were mostly process related or some integration stuff that can be worked out easily. And the benefits, well, apart from the easy cooperation with front-end, I think most of the Sitecore slogans about SXA are true. So to enable parallel work, to have most of the majority of the website created out of components, all those are true. So yeah, from my point, that's all. If you have any questions,
I have two.
Go on.
The first one, is there any recommendations or maybe limitations which site can be accelerated with SXA or which can't?
Well, obviously, the more content-oriented site, the better use for SXA it is, because you will get most of the SXA of their components. But actually, as I said, it's very extensible. So even if you have lots of custom logic, you will be able to create the basic components using SXA. So navigation. Skończył się. It ended. Yeah. So you can build the core site using SXA, and then all the custom elements you can just add by your own. That will be even technically faster because you don't have to focus that much on the simple thing like rich text or navigation or image with some piece of text.
Okay, thank you. The second one, if So, is there SXA requires some extra fees and maybe extra license for using it?
I'm not sure how it is with Sitecore 9. With Sitecore 8, it's additionally paid. Sadly. But yeah, it's not cheap. As far as I know, but I don't know the details.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah?
Just answering your latest question, in the Sitecore 9, if you use consumption-based license for Sitecore, you get it for free. For other licenses, it is still paid, and yes, as Simon
What's
said,
consumption license?
it's you pay for, I don't remember, it's page view or something like that.
Okay.
But you need to check it with your local Sitecore representatives. Okay, of
Sure,
course,
I'll do
they
this.
have different things. Okay, my question is, you said that, from what I understand, the biggest problem during your development were actually front-end developers, which are not really happy with working with SXA, because they got the HTML, which was hard-coded for them. They didn't know how to use it, and the creative exchange in the version that they used didn't work. Do you think that if you start a new project, assuming that the creative exchange in the new version works, if you ask your front-end developers if they want to work with SXA or not, what would be their answer for that question?
I would say they say no, mostly because it restricts them a lot. They can't use whatever tools they need. So if I ask front-end developers if they have the freedom of choice, they would probably say they'd rather go with they are doing their work and we do the Sitecore work.
Okay, and you said that the project initially was about to be finished in March, and then it was finished in June.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't say all the reasons, but one of them I assume is that the front-end work was blocked, or maybe the back-end work.
The front-end was apart. Well, the estimations didn't include front-end work at all. Actually, that was one of the issues at the very beginning of the project. I mean, they've shown the designs to front-end developer, but he didn't know about the SXA yet because this decision wasn't made. Also, it was heavily underestimated from the front-end perspective. We get the front-end guy like 2 weeks after the project started, and he was busy hiring other front-end guys because there was 2 of them at the moment. So we got quite large delay, and then we got like 4 people on board to hack the components.
Okay, do you think that if you start the same project again now with front-end developers who already know SXA a bit, and with working creative exchange, would it be finished any faster, significantly faster?
If they know SXA?
If you have people who work during the project, exactly the same project starting again, the front-end work, would it be like much faster, or would it be like?
I think it would be faster, yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions?
I have one more. Do you think that some functionalities that are now in SXA will become a part of the Sitecore itself in the future? Or maybe in version 9 there's already something that was introduced by SXA and now it is part of Sitecore or the main one?
I didn't have much time to play with Sitecore 9, and I don't know whether they plan to integrate anything from SXA into Sitecore. However, since they charge for it extra and they tied this up with this usage plan, which probably might suggest that they want to promote it as the one that you should use, I don't think they will give anything for free.
Okay.
Back to the front-end implementation. So, is there any? So you mentioned that it's advised that the SXA should be like used for the content-driven. So presumably lots of different renderings, type of widgets, etc. So where your sort of implementation, your production sort of product did implement sort of like any advanced JavaScript frameworks like React or Angular on top, or it was just a pure CSS?
I don't know what the question is.
So whether there's more kind of extensibility on the front end side, whether there was more sort of playing with the JavaScript and kind of the modern frameworks on top of SXA.
Well, the biggest problem is that using SXA kind of forces certain approach because one of the reasons is that SXA just outputs the HTML, so you have to utilize it. Maybe it would be possible to, but this would require a lot of customizations to output some bare HTML and then just do JavaScript wiggly and use some advanced frameworks to set up the page and have more logic on the front end side. But in general, using SXA, technically you just create a page out of blocks. So you have a predefined layout. So using SXA, you don't create layouts because you don't have to. Actually, you're not supposed to, because in the layout there's lots of logic tied in. So there's one common layout where you put components and build the page. So first you divide it into columns and rows. Then you put navigation here, logo there, then some text, maybe some sidebar, some promo boxes, some content of the page. And all those blocks, they output HTML. And all it has to be done regarding front-end work is to style all this HTML to look like on the designs.
It's more than functional than more than design than functional.
Yeah.
Did you use like any of those JSON APIs of the SXAs?
No. I think it would be hard to marry SXA and JSON APIs.
Or for instance, like a GraphQL.
Oh, I'm not sure. The GraphQL is a part of JSS. Yes.
Yeah. So it's in general it's common technology. It's just included in the JSS as a part of JSS, but can be configured for any other solutions without JSS.
Okay. No, I haven't used it. So. Yeah.
I just would like to answer to this old guy.
Go on. Be my guest.
Yeah. And SXA by default support JSON device, so all components of the content can be used as JSON. So you can just use in the query JSON device, and you can get some content and do all the magic with JavaScript.
I didn't know that. From which version?
I don't know, 1.5, 1.6.
That's pretty recent.
It's because new.
Yeah, since we started almost more than a year ago. We are using still 1.2, I guess. Nobody wants to update, so I cry a lot, but nobody pays for it.
And as you say, it's not just components, it's many other features like UI and so on.
Have you done any custom SXA models?
Yeah, sure, lots. Should I elaborate?
Yeah, I mean,
okay, so we've created a component to render a calendar because the business wanted like 3 calendars that shows events and they can be switched with touch on mobiles. So that's one. We've created a whole bunch of content components that are actually just facades for page content, I guess, for authors. So we just created new renderings and utilizes views that were already there, only for authors to have like image quote component and image text component and image something component, testimonial image, for example, so it's easier for them. We could do this with variants, but we wanted to create separate components. What else? we created tabular navigation for events. So we were using SXA search service to get the date facets that are used in events, then extracted years. So filled in the tabs with the dates from the facet service, and then use it for search. So we just integrated into the search mechanism that works in JavaScript. So we added another search component. So search is mostly JavaScript based in SXA. Yeah.
Can be SXA used with form formatters, or actually with Sitecore forms in Sitecore 9?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how it's with the new forms, but we are using forms in very simple manner just to send the email. But yeah, we are using forms. It has form support.
Another question?